All right, and we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. It's an honor to have you here, and it's particularly an honor to have our guests here. So I'm not alone. We have people from EllisDon here, as well as from Spectre, of course. So first and foremost, I want to introduce Olivia. Olivia is a Senior Manager Innovation and Contact from EllisDon. Thanks for being here. We get Chris with us. Chris is, our contact superstar and General Superintendent at EllisDon. And we got also Bilal, who is VDC Manager. So like the entire bandwidth, so to say, of competence. And there's, of course, Emmanuel standing next to me, my co-founder and partner in crime, and myself, Oliver, co-founder and CEO of Spectre. And we're gonna talk about this amazing topic we have today, which is see it before you build it. 3D planning in Canada's most complex hospital project. And we have a lot of things to discuss. So I just want to deep dive into that. And with this little introduction, I want to hand over to Olivia first to tell us a little bit about the journey of how we actually met. And the stage is yours, Olivia.
Thank you, Oliver. Hi, everybody. It's nice to meet you all. So like Ollie said, my name's Olivia. I'm the Senior Manager of Innovation and Contact here at EllisDon. I'm out in Calgary, so it is still morning for me. But the way that we actually met Spectre was through our accelerator program. And so we run this program for one main reason, and that's that construction needs innovation that can really survive in the real world. We need solutions that can stand up on sites that have major constraints, demanding schedules, and just the day-to-day realities of dealing with hundreds of people on an active job site. So with our program, we're looking for startups that hit on these 5 main buckets that are really important to EllisDon's business. So productivity and efficiency, environment and sustainability, health and safety, contract and legal, and QA/QC. So if you want to jump to the next slide. Our program, we go through a nice, very clear sequence where we open a call for applications. Since 2023, we've had almost 400 applicants, 32 finalists, and 10 winners. So after we've reviewed our applications, we go through a shortlistings process, we interview the startups, and then we bring them out to our Toronto office to pitch in front of a panel of construction experts, our executives, our CEO, and people like Chris, who are actually in the room there to ask the hard questions and have people like Oliver answer them as to why they think they have the next best thing in contact. So once we go through that pitch day, we pick 2 to 4 winners each year, and Spectre was one of the winners from 2024. So it's been great working with them. And if you jump to the next slide, we have some live action shots of Oliver back in Toronto. And really, like Spectre really hit on why it's important to go from the old ways of planning. You can see he's got the old sticky notes on a big board out in a site office to digitally planning and looking at your BIM model with your schedule in hand to hand and really planning at a granular level. So as we've worked with Spectre, what we offer as part of our accelerator is guidance. We want to give the startups our experience, our staff that have been in construction for 20 plus years, and give them the feedback that they need to test their product on a live site. It gives them visibility. You know, we're here today doing this webinar. We're able to share our startups with people across Canada, across North America, and eventually internationally. And then running obviously these live pilots. So with the job that we're going to talk about today, Oliver, Emmanuel, and Chris and Sophie and Bilal are also going to talk about how that process has been, the feedback that they've gotten, and the successes that they've seen on site. Next slide. And so if there's anybody on the call who has a solution, if you're working on something, scan this QR code, you can reach out to me directly. Our applications are open for the 2026 program, which will be applications closed end of June, and then the pitch day will be later this year in November.
Amazing.
Thank you, Ollie.
Thank you, Olivia. It's been a pleasure working with you guys too. And if there are startups here, I can just highly recommend the program. It's like super hands-on. It's a great experience to fly over to Canada and work with EllisDon. And you meet a lot of great peers, a lot of other contact founders thinking about how to innovate the industry. So really 10 out of 10, please do. And send an application over to Olivia. To kick off things about Spectre, we thought about doing like a little intro about us first before moving into like the real job site. So what the Spectre stands for, we do really stand for 3D site management, as Olivia said. And we are focusing on 3 areas, which is planning, communication, and documentation on the field. And by doing that, we not only want to increase efficiency, but particularly transparency and predictability across the entire job site. We are working with GCs primarily globally. Of course, DACH region. We're based in Germany and Cologne, but also over in North America, Japan, New Zealand, UAE, even Africa, actually, and also in the Nordics, particularly in Finland. It's been a great pleasure to working with multi-billion-dollar businesses, but also SMEs, right? So also like small, medium-sized enterprises who share the vision of leveraging 3D models. And you can see different sorts of projects and different types, office buildings, logistics, hospitals, and so on and so forth. And the vision that we had almost 5 years ago, we're actually turning 5 years in 2.5 weeks, which is a great milestone that we're hitting, is that we saw a structural data gap in construction, right? So we have on the left-hand side, like pre-construction, where we do spend a lot of time in creating data, 3D models, scheduling data, maybe bill of quantities. A lot of effort is put into creating this. But then there's like this structural gap, which means that in the end, we end up using sticky notes, but also pen and paper on our fields for our day-to-day processes. And we have a lot of implicit knowledge that is in our head. It's not written down, but it's in our head. And construction manager and superintendents across the globe use it to control multi-million or multi-billion-dollar projects. Although we have the data available, right? We're not just leveraging it. And at the same time, the data flow from the field back to the office is also kind of complicated, sometimes not even possible. And this was the mission that we want to tackle. So instead of using traditional planning methodologies of last planner system, just tables, pen and paper, visual planning, like you see in the bottom left corner, where you definitely have hard days of mapping those week or day-to-day progress back into the overall schedule, and also having like your daily log as a separate sort of documentation tool. We believe there's an easier way. And the easier way is definitely centered 100% about the 3D model, because it makes visible what needs to be planned and also how we should actually plan. And so the core process in Spectre is actually super simple and super straightforward, which is mainly I show how the building is right now. I click on what I want to build next, like the ceiling. I hit the planning button, and Spectre gives you like all the post-its, the work steps right at your fingertips. So the only thing you need to do is actually to drag and drop those predefined work steps onto the respective days, like mount prefabrication, reinforcement, and then concreting. And you see those sticky notes popping up right into the perfect structure, upper floor 4, which is from the model. And at the end of the day, we update the status or document a delay in case something happened, like bad weather occurred in Germany or in Canada, and we need to postpone this task for another day, let's say 2 days later. And that's how we document the delay and also see it visually in the model. And based on this core process, which is again super easy, super straightforward, we automate a lot of organizational burden that construction managers and supers have across the globe, from doing printouts to have a more visual touch of communication, to like updating schedules, to completing daily reports, also doing analysis about PPC or different lean construction metrics or anything surrounded. And we automate this, right? And this the way how we save actually time for the construction managers and make construction in the end more collaborative, more transparent, and more predictable. But enough has been said, like from a theoretical point of view. I guess you guys all joined this webinar today to actually get some first insights about the big project that EllisDon's is building with us in Canada. So I'm like super excited to give it over to Chris, General Superintendent. But Chris, feel free to introduce yourself as well and tell us a little bit about Toronto Western Hospital.
No problem. Hi, everyone. Chris Massey, General Superintendent. I've been with EllisDon's for almost 20 years now. And this project that we're working on downtown Toronto on the corner of Bathurst and Dundas is for UHN. It's a 15-story tower, mostly operating rooms, a new MRI, and some other stuff that happens in hospitals. But I won't bore you with all those details. The main issue with building a hospital downtown is it's a lot of just-in-time deliveries and a lot of pre-planning that has to be done prior to anything starting. So that's kind of how we merged with Specter to get a better grasp on doing it properly so that we didn't have any issues, or we have less issues, I guess, coming down the pipe. So Manuel, if you want to maybe start sharing the model, we can show everybody where the magic's happened.
Great. Sounds good. Hello, also from my side, I'm Emmanuel, co-founder of Oliver, and I've been following Chris and the team and supporting them with implementing Spectre, and happy to help today, sharing my screen, because today we're really looking live at the software. If you have any questions, write them down. I think we're going to have some time at the end to answer a couple of those. And yeah, I think I'll start sharing my screen, and Chris, maybe to open this up for you, right? So maybe you can share a bit about how was your experience with Spectre so far? What are the key things you're doing? And maybe you can walk your audience a bit through what we've done. I think we can start maybe with the structural part that's currently ongoing, and then also take a little outlook on the interiors, MEP, and all the complex stuff that's going to happen soon and already happening.
Sure. The only thing I see on my end, though, is Oliver, as much as he's, oh, see, there we go. Now we're Okay, so I'll try to make this as quick as possible without confusing anyone, but we have a very specific workflow that we like to try and achieve, and it's basically color-coded. Green is done, yellow is where we're working, and red is where we're going to be next week, and then purple is kind of within 3 weeks or outside of the 3-week zone. That's kind of the realm of what we work in, and it started with all the 2D drawings, which is great. But now we're in a position where we can actually start to schedule in a 3D model that we can break down into all the areas and all the components that we want it to be. So if you were using another model, perhaps it comes in as a block, and it's basically, you would say on your schedule, FRP level 5, and then you get 35 days, and then you're stuck kind of in the field breaking it down, and maybe there isn't some agreements there, and the list goes on. But now we're in a position where we can actually take this model and we can break it up to as many bits and pieces as we want. It's complicated at the beginning, and you need to put the time and effort in to get there. But once you get there and once it's set up properly, it works quite well. So what you're seeing there is the project, but everything you see below the yellow is green because we've completed that section. And everything you see in yellow is where we were working, and everything you see in red there is where we're going to try and get to next week. And then the purple down below, I'm not sure why it's showing purple down below. I think we're falling behind on that one wall. But at the end of the day, we've built our master schedule to reflect what we're doing in Spectre. So it's a breakdown of every single item that we're doing for maybe one floor pour. So, and Emmanuel, maybe if you want to turn off all the levels except for, I can't tell, is that level 8 there?
Yeah, I think that should be level 8. Let's see. There we go. Do you want the details here, or we can also hide some of the stuff we don't need?
No, you can keep it like that for now. So what we'll do is we'll schedule out every single pour break. So you can see the lines and the slabs there. And we'll get into some architectural stuff after, but it's a lot simpler to understand if you go through the structural model first. But we're in a position now where we can schedule pour 1, pour 2, pour 3, pour 4 in a 3D perspective. So I guess we call it 4D scheduling at the end of the day. But the magic is that we can create a pour break in a model, and we can break down all the tasks that have to happen within that one pour break. So if you see on the right-hand side of your screen there, Those are all of our tasks that are in our master schedule. And I'll get back to the master schedule in a second, but all of those match the master schedule. So they're tied together, and I don't have to spend a whole lot of time updating the master schedule because it's doing it as we go. And then my scheduling team will follow along, and then we have some questions at the end of the month sort of thing. And we just make sure everything is kind of in line, and then we carry on with life. But as we go through and start to schedule out your tasks, it's a collaborative discussion with your trades. And what we find is that there's a lot more engagement when there's a 3D model in front of you, because it really gets the juices flowing, and people start to open up and tend to be a little bit more collaborative because they can see what's coming. Whereas if it's just a 2D drawing with a bunch of colors, we tend to lose our audience. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, but you tend to lose your audience more with the 2D now compared to the 3D. And maybe there's a wow factor in there too, because that hasn't really been, I want to say it's never been done before, but there's a lot less teams that are working with a 3D model. But anyways, just to kind of break it down, we would click on pour one, and we would schedule out all those items. We would put some dates to it. All of that would go to your weekly look ahead, which is what Emmanuel's showing there. And then if you click on that guy there, yep. So that opens up the whole new schedule for your call it your last planning system. There's some things I don't like about that, but we'll get to that maybe some other day. But anyways, it's all intertwined is what I'm getting at. So it's very collaborative in a sense where if you miss a pour date, or you need an extra day on forming the slab, or you need an extra day pouring a column, you need whatever it is, it's still a sticky note that just gets moved around. And the good part is it's tracked, and there's a reason behind every single decision that you make, and you are allowed to, and you can make your comments on why it happened that way, which is at the end of the day, 4 years into a project, if you need to go back and look at it, that's where, it's a great system. You can get into each column, like if you want to break it down to, so originally what we did is we broke it down to every single column. Like we want to pour these 4 columns. So Emmanuel, if you want to click on a couple of columns there or something. Yeah, so we can schedule out every single column. So if I know we're only pouring one column per day, we click on that one column, we schedule out, you click on the next column, you schedule out, you click on the next column, you schedule it out. So you can get very, very granular if you want. I'm not sure it's for everyone from that granularity perspective. There's a lot of work involved in I shouldn't say it's a lot of work, but there's probably more work involved in trying to figure out every single column, whereas you'll probably just pour that row in one day, and then you form, pour, and strip, and then that's it. So, but you can do that too, right? So it's all however you want to set up your program, which is why I bring that up, because there's other things that you don't have to get to this level of detail if you don't want to. If you want to just do a level 5 pour, form reinforced pour, you can do that. We choose not to on this project because it's so tight, and there's so many deadlines, and there's a lot of logic behind getting from point A to point B. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to show. What's our workflow, and when are we going to get there, and how are we going to get there? And I'm not sure, there's probably not, oh, sorry, I guess you can go into maybe open up the schedule.
Yeah, because Chris, there was actually also a question. I'm not sure if you want to mention it, but from the audience, from Arthur Enging, sorry for the pronunciation. How big of an issue was it that the work steps aren't linked in the schedule? Love the presentation. Thank you for your input. But yeah, how big of an issue was it that the work steps aren't linked to the schedule? I guess that's before Specter, because you mentioned, right, we obviously link the work steps to the schedule. So it's probably a bit of comparison, like before Specter and after Specter, and particularly surrounded around the 4D topic.
So before Specter, it's a lot of manual input, and you have to keep doing it over and over and over again. Whereas once you load it into Specter and you link everything, it's done, right? So we would probably spend maybe some time linking where we are pre-Specter, but now we're in Specter, we will link all the floors, and then it updates itself as it goes. That answers that person's question. Where
Exactly, yeah. So maybe to chip in here, what you can see here, and I hope you can read it right. it is the same structure more or less, right? Fourth floor, zone B, pour one, pour two, verticals, and so on. And you can go deeper, right? This is what comes from your Primavera. This can be directly imported via XER file. And the nice thing is that what we do in the look ahead, it directly maps back to this. So I can double click on this green bar, which shows what you actually accomplished, and you can even see, what activities happened. We had which trades were working, right? We had the M&E installation, then we had the pour, and we were like 2 weeks ahead in pour one, suspended slab four, right? And this is directly connected. You don't have to, do this manually.
Right. And the other part to that is you can only, I shouldn't say only, what you do is when you're actually scheduling out the model, it's the exact same task, right? You can add more tasks if you want to that don't necessarily have to be in the schedule, but all of those tasks match the tasks on the right, which tie into your model. So it's a full system that helps everybody be on the same page, and there's no discrepancies because there can't be, because they're all linked together, right? So if you have a big team and they're all trying to figure out when you poured or when you're supposed to pour, it's all right there, right? And how it ties back into the master schedule, how you're going to plan it out, and then that's how you find out ahead of time if something's going to be wrong or if you need to mitigate, or you see it coming a lot more now through this than you do, or than I did on, say, 2D or other systems.
I guess it answers the question. There's one more or less follow up. The other one is about MEP electrical systems. We come to that later on, right? If we go into the architectural part. But for the follow up, Ashley Maxwell is asking, can you run us through the P6 XER import, please? Do you essentially upload and then link activities to the model items?
Exactly. You literally upload it and then you go through and you just link what you want. In the manual, you can probably give a better explanation than I can, but you go through the schedule, the task is there, you link it to whatever you want it to link to, and then you kind of give each other a high five and walk away.
Exactly. So what's important, right? If you upload your P6, right, you get this gray bars, that's your P6, and then you can start to connect it to all the parts in Spectre, right? You can connect it to the model. You can also import that if you have already a connected model in a different schedule, like Synchro, for example, or other tools. But it's very easy, right? You just say, we have our L4 that belongs to L4, and you click connect. Then you have those components connected, and the more detailed you want to go, of course, then you can also do that all the way to the individual packages. And this is something that can be done completely upfront. It can be done step by step, right? So you can do this in whatever way you want. Of course, it's great if you have some support, right? Like Bilal and so if you have the VDC team on board, you have people who can support with that. But even if you're just in the field as a superintendent, you can do that step by step and make sure that everything is aligned once you go there.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to what you're saying there is you will need support. I don't think there's too many people that can just open this up and go to town and say, yeah, I don't need an onboarding session. It's pretty, and maybe it'll get there in 5 years when the rest of the world's doing it and it becomes a little bit more normal. But it's not a system where you just literally, okay, we're going to take it on and it's going to work. It probably won't work if you have that attitude. You will need the support, in my opinion. You will need the support, and you will need a team around you, because it takes, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about for us. It shouldn't be a one person or a single line from point A to point B. You need people and you need workers to put their input in to get you to the finish line. And that's one of the big things I like about it, because you have to engage other teams and you have to get their input, and we're finding we're getting better input because people can see the point A to the point B and they can see the obstructions before you get there. And what I like is to get it as granular as possible, because we should be tracking as granular as possible. So this is our planning tool. You want to get to as deep as you can. But we also have tracking tools now that will work with this workflow. So for us, it's not extra work. It should never be extra work. It should be something that helps you collaborate and helps you get better feedback from the teams, and it's a tool that you keep in your toolbox to use to build the building. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see 10 different programs and we have to open up all 10 of them to do a little bit different. This so far has been able to keep us in strictly a planning tool, and then you put the planning tool aside and then we have a tracking tool, and they merge together organically because it's the same schedule and it's the same zones, it's the same columns, it's the same pour breaks, it's all of the same tasks. And that's the magic of getting it from point A to point B and having a real record of what you've done.
Amazing. That's maybe also a good point to talk a bit about, right, the data input that we had, right? Besides the P6 schedule, of course, the model is also an important part. But here the model, it was not developed by EllisDon's in-house or anything. It just comes from the consultants, right? Bilal, you can explain a bit more about that in a second. And then there's a lot of things that you can do in Spectre with the model, right? Like setting your pour breaks. Where do we want to have them, right? This is doesn't come organically from the model typically, but those are things that you can do in Spectre, defining, which walls, which elevator sections belong together. And so that's also an important part that needs to be considered, of course. And Bilal, maybe, from your point of view as a VDC manager, how would you say has Spectre impacted your life, and how do you see it working together with the input you get?
Yeah, thank you, Emmanuel. Hi, everyone. My name is Bilal from EllisDon's, VDC manager. So using Spectre, I definitely do see a lot of the benefits with 3D planning for site and what Chris was elaborating to. But I think the most important part is when we start this initially at the beginning of the phase, it's important to communicate with the consultants and splitting walls and making sure that elements are not floating and everything is connected. One challenge that we did notice at the start was we were having issues with disconnecting walls and connecting it to the project timeline schedule. So it's very important that when we do the onboarding, we communicate with the consultants what we are expecting from their models, clean models that are properly separated, so that it makes it easier through Spectre itself.
And sorry, if I can add one thing to what Bilal's saying is we are very model heavy here, and a lot of our other systems require a good model. So we are lucky in the sense that our consultant team so early on understood the importance of a good model. And I don't want to see a half-baked model because it doesn't do us any good. So give us a real model as early as you possibly can, and we can start to work with it. But if you wait too long, it's reactive, and we shouldn't be reactive at this time, I guess is the best way to say that. It's one of those things where not everybody has the luxury of going to the consultants and saying, hey, we need a model now, right? So I get it, but we were very firm in letting them know that majority of our systems that we are going to be using need a good model, and that's the entire workflow, and probably a whole other webcast, but it starts with the model, and if I don't have a good model, then we're just going to have issues, and it makes more issues for Bilal, it makes more issues for Sophie, and then my team gets frustrated, and then all of a sudden we don't want to use it anymore. So we have to make sure that we're making sure that we're getting good models.
Correct. And another thing to add on to that too is Spectre uses IFC files. So not only if you don't have a good clean model, you're spending the time splitting them, but then there's also added time with creating an IFC export, which takes tremendous amount of time for those who are in the VDC team. You know how much time it does take, and if you're exporting both architectural, structural, and your trade models such as MEP, you do need to account for that time as well too.
Yeah. So maybe I think that's a good point to actually go into, the more detailed model, because what we're seeing here, right, it's pretty simple. I would say most of the projects you see have some basic structural model, right, that just has some more or less decent quality, but where it then really becomes to differ a lot is when we go into the details of the architectural, technicals, MEP, and so on.
And anybody that wants to do some onboarding with Spectre, I highly recommend you start with the structural model because it's much more It's much more simpler and a lot easier to understand how the system works. Whereas what we're going to show you here is going to look, it might look extremely complicated, but once you break it down, it starts to make sense. So probably the best way to show this is if you turn off everything except for level 4. And then, so what we did, it started in 2D, and then we realized that Spectre can do this, but we are breaking down our floors per pass. So typically you might do a zone A and a zone B, which is kind of how we all started. But it never works out from going from, your flow never works out zone A to zone B. It really works out to how you put the walls together and the workflow, and you have to make sure you have that workflow ironed out months and months and months ahead of time prior to getting to the floor. So what we were able to do is we were able to go in and we were went through the model and assigned passes to every single wall on that floor. The driver for those walls would typically be, for this project anyway, the driver for what walls need to go first is our HVAC passes. So we have 7 passes. I think we only have 4 on here, but we have 7 passes total, and they're all color coded here. So if you want to open up the color legend, and there's our legend for what the passes are, right? So we come up with these passes because we know where the ductwork is starting first, right? So pass 1, and not to get too much detail, but pass 1 happens on this project well ahead of time. And then the floor kind of sits for a bit because we have to start doing some other stuff. And then once we actually get our speed wall installed, then we can actually start getting the floor going. So pass 1, if you take that out of the equation for now, it's literally, we are going to ask our drywall to come in. We want you to do everything you see in yellow, I want completed. And I want you to start on the right corner, and I want you to finish on the bottom right corner. And you're going to go in a counterclockwise position. Those are the walls you're going to do. Call me when you're done. And then we can say, okay, Mr. Ductwork person, what section are you installing first? So he says, okay, now we're going to do this. So if you can see the legend there for HVAC passes. So it's a light green color in the top right, in the top middle of the screen. That's his first section. That's their first section of ductwork that they're going to put in. So we need to make sure that wall is done prior to that piece coming, right? So we can actually go in now and we can pick which walls to schedule out, install the tops, tape, and then we can go and do other stuff in that same pass while he's doing that ductwork. But the point to remember is that typically our schedule would say, okay, we're going to go from zone A to zone B. So we're going to go right to left, but it never works out that way. That's never how it goes together, right? And then we always end up with what I call conflict resolution on the floor because people are confused as to which direction we're going. So now we are able to go through, and we're months ahead of the game here for level 4, not so much on the higher levels, but for level 4. And it's a good training tool for everybody to get on board and to see which walls we're going to do and why we're doing them. So you can literally grab this and you can show everybody. And if you need to turn off the MEP, you turn off the MEP and you have a conversation about walls. If you turn off all the walls, you need to have a conversation about MEP, then you just keep the MEP on. But you can zoom in, you can rotate, you can have questions. And if somebody says to me, I can't install that ductwork, I say, how come? Right? And then they have to prove to me why they can't install that ductwork or why they can't put that piece in, which is fine, just as long as you have a reason why it can't be done. And then we can adjust our flow. So if I wanted to change one of those walls right now to a different color, to a different pass, easy. Click on it, which Emmanuel, you can do, just click on any wall. Yeah. So if I wanted to change that to, okay, now that's going to be in pass 3 or 4. Yeah. You click on it, it's done.
Bit scared of doing this here, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And you can even have multiple colors or passes assigned, right? So there can be situations where it can also be helpful to give multiple dimensions of information in the visualization. So you have a lot of flexibility how you set up. And what I would recommend, right? I think Spectre is a system where you can do all of this, but you definitely need somebody like Chris, right? Who really, thinks about it. How do we want to do it? What's the logic, right? What do we need for information? Who needs it, right? So that's kind of where it really comes to it, where the magic happens, I think.
Yeah, and again, our schedule is broken down. Our master schedule is broken down to these passes. So pass 2 happens at a certain amount of time. And what I mandate with my team is if we're doing pass 2, I don't want to see any other materials here except for pass 2. At some point, you're going to bring in pass 3 materials. I don't want to see pass 3 materials here until you're pretty much done pass 2. That's the flow, right? I don't need to see, we don't need the floor full of stuff. And that's part of that problem is because it's a small floor plate in a very tight urban area. So I understand people might not have this problem on other projects, but for us, that's what the mandate is. It's like, I don't want to see your fixtures. I don't want pass 4 fixtures here if we're only on pass 1. And here's the reason why, right? And you can show that and you can push and it makes it opens up a whole different perspective and problems because deliverables are always a problem and everybody wants to deliver everything all at the same time. But we can't do it here. We will fail if that's the way everybody's mentality is. So the big reason why we came up with all of these flows and we were able to get in inspectors is to alleviate some of that, again, conflict resolution on the slabs.
And how were you doing this, like before you started to doing this inspector and having this 3D component, especially like comparing the HVAC systems with the drywalling and trying to create something similar?
It was 2D. So you literally would grab the architectural drawings, you'd try and figure out best foot forward, and then you'd open up your HVAC drawings, and then you would kind of figure out which pieces are going in there, and then you go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Whereas this is a one-stop shop, right?
And so you would overlay like different sorts of execution plans, right? Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. We would get buy-in or some feedback from our subs, and they would say, we can do this, this, and this, but you're still fumbling back and forth. And when you have a model, not like outside of Spectre, it's a lot of information, and not everybody can navigate through it with, like, we lose our audience a lot when you open up a model and start zooming around, right? Because there's everything in it. Whereas this is much simpler, and it also has our schedule attached to it. And if something's going to go sideways, we find it pretty much right away, right? And if somebody can't install, like if our ductwork sub can't install a certain set of ductwork because of whatever, you see it on the model right away. We would change the color to whatever it might need to be, let's call it red, and say, okay, something happened, maybe it's in our control or out of our control, but this piece is not going in, which means it affects this person, this person, this person. But people see it now, right? Whereas it's a thought process that people maybe don't come up with in a meeting, right? And then you find out later, oh, I can't do this.
Oh. Before we maybe also get to questions from the audience, because the chat is quite filled. What's the outcome of that? Like, are your look-aheads in the end, I don't know, more realistic, more accurate? What would you say is the outcome at the end of all the work?
Yeah, it is. I don't know if there's any magic to speak about with Spectre, but the magic on how we are putting the floors together is what is driving the outcome. We are just able to illustrate it better with Spectre. But because we've broken them down into so many passes, and because the mandate is you're going to install these only in pass 2 and then only in pass 3 and only in pass 4, we can narrow down a pretty good timeline as to what your durations need to be.
Amazing. I just go like through the questions randomly, so sorry if your question maybe was asked a couple of minutes earlier, but I guess an interesting question is, what are the advantages with using Spectre as opposed to Autodesk, CC, BIM 360? So like typical CDEs with maybe sometimes add-on features like 4D scheduling. Not sure if you have experience with all of those tools, Chris. I'm not sure if you have an answer to that, but it's definitely a good question.
I'll answer to the best that I know how. My experience with other models is you can't break it down and you can't cut sections to what you want them to schedule out to. Like pass 2 in the architectural, I wouldn't be able to go into that model. It's one block of walls and I would have to click on that, and you can't cut them and separate them into only pass 2 areas.
Yeah. Maybe to add on that from my side, right? We've started building Spectre from day one for the field, right? Our first users were foremen. We always try to keep it as simple as possible, even though, right, it's a complex topic. You have models, schedule, you have tasks, right? But we try to keep it as simple as possible, right? Other tools that are not kind of built around that use case site management, they are typically really good at what they do, but they're a lot more complicated to use when you try to tailor it than to site management, right? You can do that, and I think if you're a real expert, there are big CAD tools that can basically do anything more or less, but there's no way that you can achieve that goal in an easy way as a site manager needs it, right? Because he cannot become first a Revit expert or become that and that. And also regarding 4D scheduling, often is made for like experts that are behind the scenes, but not that much for the people who are sitting at the front line.
Yeah, I've used other 4D scheduling tools before, and I've found the other ones, there's always something in there that it wouldn't do. And it wouldn't show what I'm trying to show, right? And it would be something simple like, I can't change this wall to be purple and it only stays yellow, right? And then like, well, that defeats the purpose, right? So somebody thinks we're going to put that wall in before the next wall.
Yeah. And sorry, Chris, I didn't want to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Well, so one thing I did want to also add to, like, one of the best things about Spectre, in my opinion, compared to like Autodesk softwares like Navisworks, is you can do this on Navisworks, but the challenge is you have to always load an appearance profile file to be able to get those color codings, which can be tedious at times, whereas Spectre has it all retained within the cloud software itself. It's web-based, so you don't have to download a local file to apply all of this. If it's a heavy project like Toronto Western, where we have over 180 models appended at one time, even viewing it on ACC Forma cloud can be very slow as well. Whereas with Spectre, it's very quick, it's much more fluid. You can select which models you want to have loaded at that time that you're planning as well too. And I feel like with Spectre, it doesn't really focus much on 4D scheduling because it doesn't show that simulation and animation, but the ability of tying in with the 3D model and the schedule to visually see what's installed, what's planned, and what's coming up is much better in my opinion.
Nice. Thanks, guys. Then a lot of new questions popping up. Let's make sure to pick most of them.
Rapid fire, Oliver.
Yeah, can you use the IFC attributes to group and organize elements for installation and planning in Spectre? Of course, always assuming those attributes are within the model.
I mean, maybe I can jump in there as well. So in this project, we haven't really, put in any custom attributes that we use specifically for doing this. We did a lot of it in Spectre, but we used some of the attributes that were already there, right? So I can click on this wall and I see up here like all the attributes.
Sharing, by the way.
Sorry, exactly. Thanks.
No worries.
Right, so I'm just clicking on a wall here, and you can see all the attributes under properties that are there, right? We have some core wall schedule, even attributes, dimensions, identity data, right? And you can see, okay, I want just to color it quickly by this attribute. So it's very easy to see and understand, okay, that's what we have. And we use these attributes and also to connect the model with your activities, right? So that the same type of wall always has the same type of activities and sequences, right? So you don't have to set all of this up manually. You don't have to type it every time. It comes basically as a combination from your model with the properties and your pre-built templates from EllisDon's, or you can also use templates of ours. If, however, and that's important to know, right? Your company has the potential also to, add more properties, add specific information that can be helpful on the site. You can add all of that and you can directly use that, right? To do your planning, to create colorings, to filter, to do basically everything with that information that can be very, very powerful if you have that capability.
And you could also like group your look ahead based on properties from the model, right? So we are leveraging the information across the entire software, which makes it super adjustable for basically any case that you have.
Exactly.
Then because we talked a lot about HVAC and MEP, but what about electrical scope? So Haddad Ennis is asking for particularly objects that are typically not modeled. So wire pulling, connecting. How do we track this? Do we have experience with this yet on the project?
So I'll take a stab at that. Great question. And that's an issue because we find it very hard and I think it's an industry wide problem. We find it very hard to get a very good electrical model. So, in saying that, my mandate or the way I deal with that is that, okay, if you're not going to give us a real model, but yet everybody else has, we're going to go on the basis that you are going to coordinate accordingly. And if it's on the model and there's an issue on site, I win every time because you didn't model it, right? And I'm going to go through at these passes, and I'm going to install all of this at this time. And if your model is incorrect, that's your problem because you didn't put the time in up front, but we did. And the rest of the group put their time in to make sure that we had a plan in place and to make sure that it worked. But for whatever reason, you didn't. And that's how I am, not saying I'm successful, but that's how we're trying to deal with that now.
Yeah, maybe one add-on to that. So we haven't done that too much in this project, but we of course often have that like things are not modeled, right? That's the standard, right? You can obviously just plan stuff in your look ahead that are not modeled, right? You just write it down like any other tool.
Yeah.
What can still help for the visualizations is that if you want, you can also add drawings into your 3D model. So I think, for example, here we did that for a couple of things, and you could just upload a drawing of your electrical drawing, for example, and visualize it within your model, right? It's different, right? It's something else, but it will still be helpful to put it into context of what you're doing.
That's probably a better answer than one I gave.
Nice. Then there are two questions about tracking. So one really specific one, column A1 level 6-7 was procured on April 10. Like, who marks it as completed? And then also, what tracking tools have you integrated with Spectre? There might be a misconception about it, but I think both go the same way.
So my team looks after their own areas. So if I have a superintendent designated for, say, level 4, they are responsible for going in and updating the tasks and making sure they're scheduled accordingly. And they also have a coordinator on staff. We have coordinators on staff that help with that. So Sophie's a big part of that, making sure that we're up to date on the colors and making sure we're up to date on the actual planning. There's not a lot of it because it's all you have to do is highlight and click done, right? But where it helps is that it helps our scheduling team understand the actuals versus the plan.
Nice. And I mean that's a quick one. We can answer that probably by ourselves. Can the 3D model be made from the ground up in Spectre, or do you have the base model from the consultants and you can change the details? It's definitely the latter one. So we built some quite field specific features, like for instance, reordering. So if I know a stair wall is floating around and you want to have it associated with a specific floor, you could change it in Spectre. If you want to do some like the pouring sequences, you can split the model in Spectre. Although we always recommend, of course, to do this in the authoring tool. And also with attributes, we have some sort of flexibility. In the end, the better the model, the easier to handle in Spectre. But yeah, we are used to get, let's say, not the best models. So we built quite some tooling around it to make it as easy as possible for the field. Yeah, this was, for instance, just like a simple split, just 2 clicks, and you got the ceiling split it into 2 or multiple pouring areas, for instance. What else do we got? And I'm looking a bit at the time, so we have 10 minutes left. We probably do like a Q&A also like after the full time, and just want to be like a timekeeper here. So we do like the entire webinar story. And if someone has questions later on, please feel free to stick with us. So what is a typical update to a Spectre model entail, and how much manpower does it need for each iteration of update? So model update, P6 schedule update. I think Bilal, you're probably like the best one to talk about that. Yeah. How much effort is it?
Yeah, I mean, so like I mentioned previously, IFC exports do take quite a bit of time depending on the size of the file itself. There is like performance limitations when it comes to Spectre because it is cloud-based, so you're viewing it on the web browser. So what we have done is out of the 15 levels, I'm splitting the models for MEP into certain levels. So for example, the plumbing that you saw is from levels 4 to 7. And then the next export I'll be doing is the next 3 levels. For the architectural and structural, they're a little bit lighter, so I'm able to export it entirely. But for any VDC team that is going to be exporting this, I do suggest you leave some time on the side, maybe after work hours, start the export so that it's done at a time when you're not really using your workstation, because it can really slow down the performance of your computer too. And any bit of energy from the computer is needed to get that export done. And then for the PC schedule, I believe we do have like a scheduling team that's working with Chris. So essentially, anytime there is a schedule update, we would try to get that Primavera or Microsoft file uploaded directly onto Spectre. And Chris, if you want to add anything else to that.
No, it's a straight upload. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
One important thing to notice, right? Whenever you upload something, it's important that everything you've done in Spectre stays there, right? Even if model changes, a schedule changes, right? So even if you've split certain elements, Spectre created your pores, right? This will automatically transfer over to your new model, and those things typically stay
Correct.
stable over time. Same goes with the schedule, and because otherwise, right, this would not be scalable.
Right, which leads into the tracking, and I don't think we answered that other person's question properly. But there's no integration with Spectre that I know of, or we're not using an integration with Spectre. But we have a tracking tool that we use outside of Spectre. But the master schedule is the same in both. So when the tracker updates, it should be updating the exact same task that we're planning in Spectre. So hopefully that answered that person's question.
And then I'd say one more from the chat and maybe 2 more from us, and then moving into like the closing remarks. What challenges have you faced to date using the system? Quite generic one, but I'd say let's limit it to like the Chris Massey challenges, and maybe also like your field team, right? I mean, you're not the only one on site. So also what's the experience maybe of your colleagues?
Long onboarding process. And we have a group here that are very good with models, and I'm not sure we would have the same outcome if we weren't model heavy, because there's like I said before, a lot of our systems work with the model, so it's a workflow from point A to point B. The other thing is, or the other issue might be, if you are not used to working with a model, it takes some time to understand how the system works. Like Sophie and Bilal have been working with models for a lot longer than I have, so they catch on to things a lot quicker than I do. So they understand the links, and they understand the tags, and they understand the properties and all that stuff. And a lot of that stuff is somewhat new to me. Like I get it, but the language that they use for some of that stuff I may or may not understand. So there's a barrier there to get over. That's why I recommend, if you're going to onboard with Spectre, try and do it with a structural model, because it's straightforward, and you understand the system and the program and what it's capable of before you get into very high level detailing of floors.
One thing I might want to add, I think Chris and his team, right, they're really doing like excellent, right? They're going really detailed. They're doing this extremely precise, exactly to avoid these collisions on site and avoid issues. We also have many customers that, you know, are a bit higher level, right? That don't go into all the details, right? Or then some things are also simpler at the beginning, and it really depends on, you know, how detailed and what effort you want to invest as well.
And then maybe second to last question, how does Spectre compare to like other field management or also lean tools? What would you say, Chris?
I mean, yeah, that's a stumper. It's it's good. Like it's as soon as you get over that onboarding process, and maybe the barrier of understanding the system and not being overwhelmed with it, it has so much more potential, and it has so many more avenues to use other than strict. Like if you really wanted to just use Spectre, and you don't have a model, and you really wanted to use Spectre just as like your last planner system, you can, right? And the magic there is that it links with your P6. So the real or the actual dates line up with your schedule, and you can use it for that, right? And you don't necessarily have to have the model. And when you need to present, even if you don't have the model, it's pretty straightforward. So I don't know what else to add to that other than there's a lot of different avenues to it, right? So, but you have to take the time and you have to get through it, and try your best to understand exactly how the program works, because that's what actually opens the doors to understanding and getting deeper into your project, which we all have to do anyways. So you might as well do it.
Amazing. And maybe lastly, at least from my side, on which types of projects would you believe does specter like create the most value, and when should you use the tool, or when start using the tool? Actually,
to be honest, I would use it all day, every day for every project, and I would use it right from the beginning. So if we start a new project tomorrow and the structural model is ready, I'm in. Send it over, because I want to cut that structural model into how I want the building to flow together. And then when the architectural model comes through, then I do the same thing. I can flow all that together. And what we were able to do pre-specter is we put all of the passes in our tender schedule. So there's no conversations after. Everybody knew there was 6 passes, 7 passes, depending on the floor. We didn't necessarily know exactly where those passes were, but now, and that was strictly all done in 2D. Those drawings are very close to what we've done in specter, but the conversation's a lot easier now, because people can see how detailed we actually need to be in order to get from point A to point B. And don't get me wrong, there still are some road barriers or some barriers. There's still people that don't believe it, and they don't think it's going to work, and they don't want to put the time in, and you still have all of that. And I don't know if we'll ever get past that, or it'll probably always happen. There's always somebody in the group that wants to speak their opinion. But if you stick with it, it's a good tool.
Thank you, Chris.
All
right, Olivia, your turn again. Let's come to a conclusion is to talk a bit about innovation in general as a GC.
Will do. I'll put a nice bow on everything here. I won't take long, don't worry, guys. So this slide, there's a lot of information on here, but I just wanted to highlight that EllisDon's has been innovating basically since our inception in 1951. So it's our 75th anniversary this year. Some of the highlights along the way, we developed our own project management systems in-house, formerly Edge Builder, now Gate 3. We were also the first contractor to digitize our accounting system. So it's baked into our history, and moving into this accelerator world has been just kind of a natural extension of that. So like I said before, we launched in 2023. Next slide. And I mean, I think Chris hit on it a lot with his challenges that are specific to his site, but we're seeing the same challenges across the industry on all of our sites. And I read something this week that said that not every job is a snowflake, but every kind of combination of players on that job makes our snowflakes. So you have a different GC, you have a different consultant who may or may not have a model, you have different subtrades, you have different site locations. And on top of all that, you know, as we know with the world these days, we have skilled labor shortages, we have owners who want their jobs done faster, and they want them to be more complex and more challenging. So Chris's job was a great example of that, and part of the reason why we picked it for the Spectre pilot. And last slide is kind of ties into what Chris was just saying about, and it talks about aging workforce here, but it's really just like the shift in the mindset of people of moving from the way that construction has always done things and the way that we know has worked before, and then how can we, you know, engage people who are, you know, strong with their BIM skills, strong with modeling, strong with handling new software, and really utilize that to help our job sites excel, to meet their schedules, and to really succeed. So it's really our role to try and help bridge that gap and make everybody's life easier. And like Chris said, you're always going to have a naysayer in the room, but that just helps highlight, you know, where we need to continually improve and where we need to fill the gaps in the processes. So that's really all I had to say about innovation in general. It's an ongoing challenge, and we talk about it every day, but you know, working with teams like Spectre has really helped us kind of see the bright light at the end of the tunnel and what we're all working towards.
Thank you so much. And I guess that's also like our like our message, right? That we want to bring across. Like innovation doesn't happen overnight. You need to start with it early. You need to have like the management, the resources, the people, the partner, may it be software, hardware, whatsoever. So there's no time to not get started. So please do so. Reach out to Olivia if you have any questions about the entire topic of innovation at GCs, particularly, of course, of Canada. But I think it's a good like example for all over the globe. Reach out to us, myself, or you can also, of course, book a free demo if you like to. We'd love to continue the conversation. And having said this, we actually do continue the conversation. So for anyone who still has some open questions, thoughts, and feelings that he or she wants to share, we still have a couple minutes left. So thanks everybody for joining. Thanks Olivia, thanks Chris, thanks Bilal, and team. Thanks Manu, Vivian, our and many more for making this possible. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a lovely night or good day ahead. And as I said, we're going to stay a couple more minutes in case there are any more questions that we can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you. 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 Thank you.
All right. So I tried to go through the chat in parallel, and I guess we answered most of the questions. Let's skip through one more time. And in case anyone else has a question, feel also free to raise your hand or just to chip in. We're giving definitely having some good feedback, which is nice. Thanks everybody. One question that I left unanswered is it possible to integrate 360 sidewalks? The short answer is no, it's not possible. You could attach photos and also maybe 360 files to Spectre to the model, but it's not like you see maybe an overlay or something. Chris, I know you have some experience with like 360 tools. Is this something you'd say it makes sense like maybe in the future to develop, or is this completely out of scope? What would you say?
I mean, we have other programs that we use that are very, very well adopted, I guess. So if Spectre, or I mean, that's your guys' call if you guys wanted to go down that road, and it would make sense because what you're planning, you should be planning and tracking all at the same time, right? But we just have some better. Well, you don't offer it, so we have other tools that are AI based that we use.
Yeah, I think rather than developing it ourselves, it's probably like an potential integration at some point in time where it makes sense, right, to talk about those kind. But in the end, they all need to add to like one specific system, I guess, right?
Yeah, it would be great if you could integrate with our, like I was saying before, I don't want to click on 13 different apps to start my day or 13 different web browsers, right? So it would be great if you could do some integration with some of our tracking technology.
All right. Except for that, I think we're pretty much good to go. Any final questions? Now is the time to step on stage. Still some people with us, so
yeah, a good sign or a bad sign?
Yeah, it's maybe everybody fall asleep, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a new message. If this was already addressed, apologies. Is it possible to update the model and keep all of the scheduling data? It was not asked, so good question.
Yeah, so absolutely. Even let's say worst case, you upload a model that is the completely wrong project, right? It's just nothing, right? You upload nothing or something completely wrong. Everything that you've done in Spectre, like your short-term sequencing, all the activities you've planned, even all the tags you've set, all the splits you've made, they're all still there in the background. And whenever you load in then the correct model again, or like an updated version, right, this will all automatically reconnect and you're back on track. Of course, this depends on a couple of small things, right? Like specific IDs need to match, right? So if you remodel the same project from scratch again, it will also not directly match. But we have a lot of systems in place that make sure that this stays stable over time.
That was probably our first question, I think, when Spectre came to us. It was like, because I'm not doing this. I'm not going to redo this every week.
And I do want to add that the Spectre team is very on top of it when if you accidentally upload a model and it's not working well, they do reach out to you directly to let you know, hey, you updated this one particular file, it's not working. Let's hop on a call and try to fix this. They're really quick with resolving any issues that they notice that I may have missed myself.
Thanks. All right. Any final questions?
All right, let's go have lunch.
Back to
Yeah.
work.
I'll be the judge of that. Thanks.
All right. See everybody.
All right.
Thanks so much for making this possible.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
again.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.